The late afternoon sun, a weak, buttery stain in the November sky, did little to warm the stretch of asphalt outside Frank's diner. Jenna clutched the worn wool blanket tighter around her legs, the rough weave a familiar comfort against the cool metal of her wheelchair. She was 9, slight, with hair the color of dusty corn silk and eyes that saw a little too much of the hard, sharp edges of the world. Today, the sharpest edge was her mother's empty promise. "Just 10 minutes, sweetie," her mother, Sarah, had said an hour ago, adjusting the faded Snoopy lunchbox on Jenna's lap. "I just need to talk to Frank about my schedule. Boss is cracking down." 10 minutes had bled into 60. Jenna had watched the slow, mechanical sweep of the second hand on her cheap plastic watch, until the movement itself seemed an insult. Sarah wasn't inside talking about a schedule. She was inside laughing too loud, her voice occasionally clipping through the thin glass of the diner window, the sound brittle and fake. She was drinking the bitter coffee and maybe a little of the something stronger Frank kept in a thermos behind the counter, trying to forget about the mountain of bills and the dull, endless ache of being a single mother in a dying town. She sighed, the breath puffing out a tiny cloud in the chill air. The Snoopy lunchbox held 2 slices of dry white bread and a jar of lukewarm apple juice. It wasn't dinner, but it was all they had left until Sarah's paycheck on Friday. She shifted in her chair, the wheels emitting a faint, high-pitched squeak. Her disability, a stubborn, unpredictable form of cerebral palsy, meant her legs were mostly decorative and her balance was a constant, frustrating negotiation. She was used to waiting, used to the slow, heavy feeling of being an anchor on her mother's desperate attempts at flight. Then, the roar started. Not a car, not a truck, but a deep, throaty rumble that vibrated in the pavement and tickled the soles of Jenna's sneakers. It grew quickly, a wall of sound that swallowed the quiet diner parking lot whole. A moment later, they arrived. 4 massive Harley-Davidsons, polished chrome gleaming like silver teeth, pulled into the spaces directly opposite her. The riders were a spectacle. Leather vests heavy with patches, denim cutoffs, long, wind-whipped beards, and bandanas tied tight over grizzled heads. The central patch on each vest, the one that seemed to radiate a silent, dangerous authority, was unmistakable, the death's head insignia of the Hells Angels. This wasn't their territory. The Angels usually kept to the roadhouse 20 miles west. Seeing them here, outside Frank's, was like seeing a pack of wolves wander into a petting zoo. People were already slowing down inside the diner, their laughter abruptly silenced. The lead writer, a giant of a man whose handlebar mustache nearly touched his shoulders, cut his engine first. He dismounted with a heavy grace, his movements economical and powerful. His vest bore the rocker's "President" above the skull. He was enormous, his arms thick as fence posts, covered in tattoos that seemed to crawl up from beneath his cuffs. His eyes, though, were a surprisingly clear, pale blue, and they swept over the parking lot with an air of practiced indifference. Jenna watched them, not with fear, but with a strange, detached curiosity. They were noise and muscle, a force of nature that existed outside the small, suffocating rules that governed her life. They smelled faintly of gasoline, leather, and something earthy, like old tobacco. The president, a man named Grizz, leaned against his bike, pulling a pack of unfiltered cigarettes from his inner pocket. His 3 companions, equally imposing men, named Bull, Tank, and Switch, stood sentinel, their gazes flat and unreadable. They weren't here for coffee. They were waiting for someone, or perhaps nothing at all. Jenna checked her watch again. An hour and 15 minutes. Her stomach gave a small, pathetic grumble. She thought about trying to wheel herself home. It was 6 blocks, mostly uphill. On a good day, it took 20 minutes. Today, with the cold stiffening her muscles, it would be an ordeal, and Sarah would be furious when she got back. She looked through the diner window. Sarah was leaning close to Frank, her hand on his arm, her head thrown back in a laugh that looked entirely too rehearsed. The Snoopy lunchbox felt suddenly heavy, an emblem of her helplessness. An impulse, sharp and desperate, surged through Jenna. It was the recklessness of a child pushed too far, the kind of irrational leap that comes when logical solutions are exhausted. She had no one else to call, no phone, and certainly no voice that could cut through the veneer of her mother's escape. She looked at Grizz. He was lighting his cigarette, the tip glowing red in the dimming light. His eyes flickered towards her, registering her presence, then immediately dismissing it. Jenna lifted her small hand. It trembled slightly from the cold, but she steadied it. She made a simple, unmistakable gesture. She raised her index finger and thumb, forming a circle. Then, she raised her pinky and index finger, keeping the middle two fingers folded. It was the sign for help, not the universal two-handed plea, but the specific, quiet, and easily missed signal for domestic distress, a silent sign language gesture that had recently been publicized as a way for victims of abuse or neglect to signal covertly. She had learned it during a school assembly on community safety, a presentation she hadn't thought about until this very moment. She held the sign up for a heartbeat, her small arm a thin line against the black leather backdrop of the motorcycle club. She kept her face neutral, just a little girl looking across the lot. Then she casually dropped her hand to adjust the blanket. Grizz had been in the middle of a long, slow drag of smoke. He paused, his pale blue eyes, sharp and practiced from years of reading the subtle tells of bars and back alleys, fixed on her. He didn't react immediately. He took the smoke in, held it, and slowly let it out in two thin streams from his nostrils. His gaze drilled into hers, a steady, unnerving inspection. Jenna felt her throat tighten, a sudden wave of nausea washing over her. She knew the club's reputation. She knew this was insane. She had just signaled a man who was, by all accounts, a criminal kingpin for help. Then, Grizz's eyes didn't look at her. They looked past her, towards the diner window. He watched Sarah and Frank. Sarah put her head on Frank's shoulder, a gesture that was clearly more than a friendly chat about a shift change. Grizz's jaw hardened, the muscles working under his thick beard. He dropped his cigarette and crushed it under the heel of his heavy boot. He rumbled, his voice like gravel rolling down a steep hill. Switch. Switch, the youngest of the group, a man with a single sharp braid, snapped to attention. "Yeah, Prez?" "New plan," he said, looking down at Jenna. "We're gonna get you home. You gotta tell me where." Jenna gave him her address, 6 blocks away. Grizz didn't try to reason with her mother. He didn't go inside. He squatted down in front of Jenna, bringing his enormous, intimidating face down to her level. He said, softer than she expected, a low murmur, "Kid, you just flashed a distress signal. You got a name?" "Jenna," she whispered, her voice barely a breath. "I'm Grizz. What's the situation, Jenna? Give it to me straight." Jenna swallowed, pointing a shaky finger at the diner. "My mom said 10 minutes. An hour and a half now. We need to get home. She's forgetting. And we don't have dinner. Just this." She patted the Snoopy lunchbox. Grizz looked from the lunchbox to the window, where Sarah was now standing up, slightly wobbly, her eyes unfocused, accepting a drink from Frank. He understood immediately. The distress was not a kidnapper or a direct threat, but a child caught in the slow, grinding neglect of a parent's addiction or distraction, the slow erosion of safety. He said, his voice flat, "I see." He turned his head and gave a sharp whistle that cut through the silence. "Switch?" Switch immediately materialized from around the corner. "Clear on my end, Prez." "New plan," Grizz said. He looked down at Jenna. "We're gonna get you home. You gotta tell me where." Jenna gave him her address, 6 blocks away. Grizz didn't try to reason with her mother. He didn't go inside. He squatted down in front of Jenna, bringing his enormous, intimidating face down to her level. He said, "Listen, Jenna, I'm going to lift you. I'm strong, but you gotta be still. We're leaving the chair. Switch will handle it. We're taking a ride, a short one. You okay with that?" Jenna nodded, her eyes wide. "All right." With an almost unbelievable gentleness, Grizz scooped Jenna up. She was light, frail almost, and he held her securely against his leather chest, her small body dwarfed by his bulk. The leather smelled clean, worn, and faintly